Hey everyone, welcome to our virtual cooking class today. My name is Kate Watts. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist with Cone Health and the Employee Live Life Well team. So thanks for joining me. Today's topic is budget-friendly recipes. So we're going to be making two recipes that go together. We're going to make a baked salmon patty and a Cajun remoulade. Basically, the reason that I chose this recipe is that salmon can be one of the more expensive proteins, but it is a very healthy choice for us for our heart health, for our brain health. And so we wanted to just highlight a more budget-friendly way to consume salmon. So the recommendation is having seafood 2 to 3 times per week, and that's for your heart health and again, also your mental health. So the key nutrient in salmon that we're trying to get is the long chain omega-3 fatty acids. And so that is your EPA and your DHA. And that's been well researched and shown to be very healthy for not only our heart, but also for our brain. So I'll go over the recommendations, but let's go ahead and kind of get started. We are going to be baking these in the oven, but you can prepare them on the stovetop fried as well. First, we're just going to combine all the ingredients we need to form our patties. I've gone ahead and preheated our oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to start actually by chopping up our onion. So we only need 4 ingredients for our salmon patties. We're going to use onion, diced onion, some panko breadcrumbs, 1 egg, and then our canned salmon. So this is going to be kind of the star ingredient here. I just purchased a wild caught Alaskan pink salmon traditional style, meaning that the bones are still in the salmon, and we'll talk about those. They are edible and full of calcium. But let's go ahead and chop up our onion. We just need 1/4 cup, so I cut an onion in half, and then I cut it in half again, and I've peeled off the outer peel. And what I'm going to do is just slice towards the bulb, so I have the bulb still intact in there, so that it will kind of hold together nicely as I come across slicing the onion. And then I'm going to turn the onion 180 degrees or 90 degrees, I suppose, and we're going to cut it across this way. And as we slice this way, we're going to get a nice diced onion. And I would cut this onion as finely as you can because it's going to be going into our patty mixture. Okay, and then once you get up to that old part, we'll just toss that. And if there's any larger pieces that escaped, we can come across again to dice those. Okay, so that is definitely more than enough for our 1/4 cup onion. So we're going to put this into our bowl here. Forgot to pull out my board scraper, my bench scraper tool. So I'll just use the back of my knife today. Okay. So we have in our bowl 1/4 cup of diced onion. Now we're going to add in our canned salmon. So let me talk you through this a little bit if you're not familiar. Most of us are familiar with canned tuna, which you can actually use canned tuna in this recipe as well. You could also do canned crab, which is another good source of omega-3s, another great seafood option. And again, you can get it in this affordable option, so as a canned product. So what I'm going to do is remove it first so you can kind of see the whole product. I've already opened it and drained it, and the recipe asks that we set aside the drained juice from the can in case we need to add it back into our patties to add a little more moisture so that they will stay together. So now I'm going to pull out the fish for you to see. Okay, so you'll see it's in larger chunks of the whole fish, like that. Now, the bones are included, and the high heat process of the canning the canning process has softened these bones. So they are actually very soft and very edible. They are not going to cause any kind of damage or harm like a fish bone would when you get like a fillet of fish at a restaurant or making it at home and you have to pull out the bones. That is not the case here. It's very common for people to actually just mash these bones into the meat and consume them. They add extra calcium, which is really great for our bones and our health. Now, if you prefer though, you can pretty easily find the area of the bones and using a fork or a spoon, scoop out that portion if you would like. So what you'll see is the stringier bones that you're probably used to, and then you'll also see these circular bones, part of the spine. Again, all of this is soft and safe to eat and a great source of calcium. So I'm not removing everything. I'm just kind of removing really more the circular part. But again, you can totally leave that in here and just combine it into the patties. Okay, so now I'm going to add this into our bowl and just start to break up the salmon a little bit with my fork. So again, that step is totally optional, just if you want to remove some of the larger pieces of the bone. And then let's talk about how much of a budget-friendly choice this is. So this canned salmon, 14.75 ounces, costs $3.89. So that's going to be about $4.20 for a pound. Now, if you buy fresh salmon, that's normally going to run you anywhere between $9 to $12 a pound. So this is a huge budget savings to still get all that good nutrition. It's a lean protein option. It's a great way to vary your protein choices. You know, when we're trying to eat a little healthier, we tend to go for chicken and turkey and get a little burnt out on the poultry. Your lean red meats are a great option as well, but this provides 17 grams of protein for every 3-ounce portion, which is about the size of the palm of your hand. And then, as I mentioned, the real benefit that we're aiming for is to get that good source of heart-healthy fats, those omega-3 fatty acids. And in terms of recommendations, nutrition recommendations for fatty acids, the recommendation or the goal is 350 to 500 milligrams per day of that EPA and DHA specifically, combined 350 to 500 milligrams per day. And this offers, it says right here on the can, 845 milligrams of omega-3 EPA and DHA combined per serving, per 3 ounces. So really nutritious and a great budget option. All right, so once I've got that kind of more in a shredded form, we're going to add in our panko breadcrumbs, a half a cup, and 1 egg. And then we have our reserve liquid if we need to add any, again, more liquid to form into patties. So there's our half a cup of breadcrumbs. Crack our egg in here. Wash my hands real quick. All right, and we're just going to combine everything till it's nice and even. So the recipe gives you 2 ways to prepare your patties. We're going to do the baked method. So all I've done is preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, taken a piece of parchment paper and lined it onto a baking sheet. I did use a little bit of cooking spray. At this step, you could also add in any spices or herbs that you would like to. I'm going to add most of that into our sauce, so you could add the same flavorings right into the patties as well. Fresh herbs would work here, as well as dried spices, whatever you like. So we're going to be using paprika, chili powder, garlic, a little bit of cayenne for some spice. So any of that you want to add in here, you can. You could add a little lemon juice in here. We're going to be adding that to our sauce. But I'm just going to keep it really simple with our patties. But you could certainly doctor it up some at this step if you'd like to. Okay, once it's well combined, we're going to form our patties and add it into our baking sheet. So I've got my baking sheet here, and I'm just going to use a little scoop so that we get approximately the same size patties. I'm just going to do a nice heaping scoop and then use my hands to form it into a patty. Like so. And put that on our baking sheet. Now this mixture will give you about 8 salmon patties. I'm just going to form up 4 for demonstration purposes. And then you're going to bake these for 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes on each side. So you'll want to set your timer for 10 minutes and then flip them over and let them cook for another 10 minutes in the oven. Now, I like the baked method because we don't have to add any extra oil, calories, or fat, and they taste really great. They're still crispy on the outside. It's a lot easier and a lot cleaner, not as messy as doing the stovetop. But if you would like to do stovetop saute method, you would just take about a tablespoon or 2 of a high smoke point oil, like avocado oil or a canola oil, and put that in your skillet, let that heat up, and then you would just place your patties onto the skillet, let them brown on each side for a couple minutes, and you'd be ready. So let me wash my hands and we'll get these into the oven. Okay, so there's our patties on the baking sheet. We're going to pop them in and set a timer for 10 minutes. And again, this baked method works great for if you're doing crab cakes, if you're doing tuna patties, if you are making black bean burgers, falafels, homemade falafels. You can do all of those baked in the oven as an alternative to stovetop frying if you'd like. All right, let's move on to our sauce now. I'm going to grab another cutting board. And we're going to start by chopping up some fresh parsley. And we're going to add everything into a bowl and then put it in the refrigerator, let it chill till you're ready to serve. The longer you can keep it refrigerated, the more these flavors are going to come together. Obviously today we're just going to serve it right away, but I will definitely be storing it in the refrigerator and letting those flavors combine till I use it again. So parsley is the fresh herb we're going to be using. And then we're going to be adding in some mustard, Worcestershire, horseradish, lemon juice, fresh garlic, and our base is going to be 1 cup of plain Greek yogurt. Now, the recipe says mayonnaise, which you can use, or you can substitute out plain Greek yogurt like I am today, or you can do half and half. If you want to do half a cup of mayonnaise, half a cup of plain Greek yogurt, just to lighten it up a little bit, make it a little bit more heart healthy, less of those saturated fats. So let me grab a knife here. So I've got my parsley nice and clean, and I'm going to remove some from the stems. You can keep the stems on and chop it all together. I just don't really love the texture. I prefer to take a little bit of extra time and pull the leaves off the parsley. Stems, that is. And we just need a tablespoon for our Cajun sauce. There's a little bit on there, that's fine, because totally edible, just a texture preference. Okay, put that in a scrap bowl. So let's finely chop this. So generally I just try to pile it together and kind of roll it all together. And then come across with a nice fine chop. Keeping my fingers back. Oh, smells really good when you chop into that parsley. Now you can use dried parsley for your sauce as well, but I think that having at least one fresh herb in a dish really makes a big difference. And this is also going to be a really nice garnish as well. So next we're going to chop up our garlic. So I'm going to put my parsley into this bowl. We'll use it in the sauce and also as a garnish to finish our dish. Just clear this. And I'm going to take one fresh clove of garlic. I'm going to peel off the skin. If you're having trouble getting the skin off, you can just, a couple different ways. You can use the end of your knife, or you can lay your knife flat and use the palm of your hand to smash it. And then that outer layer will crack open and it's a lot easier to peel off. Now I'm going to just do a quick dice, and then I'm actually going to use my little garlic press gadget here to get a really fine minced garlic. Since it is going in a sauce, I don't want any chunks. If I was using it in the patties, I'd be fine if it was just kind of a rough mince, but I want a really fine mince. So I'm going to start by cutting this in half because it is a larger clove. And then I'll put half my clove in there, and we're going to press out the garlic. And then I'll use my knife. And you know what? I'm going to do it straight into my bowl. So here's my plain Greek yogurt. And then do the other half. And I do often use the already minced garlic in a jar that you can buy for convenience. But it's always nice to use fresh garlic if you have it, if you can. Okay, so I've added in our garlic to our base. Now I'm going to add in a tablespoon of our chopped parsley. Next, we're going to add in I believe it's 2 tablespoons of a stone ground mustard. The recipe says a Creole mustard or a grainy mustard. So I found a stone ground mustard that has the grains in there, and we're going to do 2 tablespoons of that. Okay. Next, we're going to add in our horseradish. So I've got a creamed horseradish. We're going to do 1 tablespoon of that. You can taste that just from the smell of it. Love that. Okay. Then next we're going to do our teaspoon of Worcestershire and a teaspoon of lemon juice. And this sauce is going to last about 5 to 7 days in the fridge. Let's squeeze our lemon. I'm going to squeeze it into a jar, and then we'll add that into our sauce. So I've cut a lemon in half. I'm going to put it cut side. Oh, you know what? It's just about too big for my little lime squeezer. And I have to work it in there. You know, we can always squeeze it by hand. We don't have to always have these fancier gadgets, but we'll give this a try. Not going to want to fit. There we go. Just need a teaspoon anyway, so that will work just fine. So let's get a teaspoon of lemon juice. All right, there we go. So now we're going to add in our spices. We've got the main ingredients added. And for our spices, the recipe calls for a half a teaspoon of Cajun seasoning, a half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and an eighth a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, which is optional depending on how spicy you want to make your Cajun sauce. So what I did is I looked at some Cajun seasonings at the store, and pretty much all of them, the first ingredient is salt. So in an effort to do a salt-free Cajun seasoning, I simply looked at the ingredients on the back of the Cajun seasoning, and I'm gonna just use those spices myself from my own spice collection here at home. So the ingredients were salt, garlic, paprika, onion, spices, including black pepper and red pepper. So the recipe already calls for paprika, so we'll add a little bit more. I've got my garlic powder in addition to the fresh garlic that we're doing. I've got black pepper. I've got our cayenne in place of red pepper, just if we want to add a little bit of spice. And then you could do a ground onion here as well. I'm not going to worry about that. We've got fresh onion in our patties. And then I also did have a Creole seasoning here at home. Again, the first ingredient is salt, and the sodium level is 290 milligrams for a fourth a teaspoon. So I'm gonna, instead of using this, again, I just used it as a reference for what spices and herbs I wanted to use in my sauce. So the second ingredient was red pepper, then black pepper, chili powder, garlic powder, dehydrated garlic, and then a bunch of words I don't understand. That's for anti-caking. So I'm gonna add in some chili powder as well. So we're just gonna kind of take some inspiration from those flavors, those seasonings, and make our own so that it's a little bit more heart healthy. So I'm gonna use a little bit of garlic powder. I'm not gonna measure these, but I'm doing probably about an eighth a teaspoon of each spice. So there's our garlic powder, cayenne pepper, just a dash or two, depending on how spicy you like it. For our paprika, the recipe did call for a half of a teaspoon. So I am going to go ahead and do our half a teaspoon. And then we'll just do a little extra for good measure. So probably about double. And then we're going to add in our chili powder and our black pepper. And my timer just went off for my patties. So about an eighth teaspoon each of chili powder and black pepper. So I'm going to remove the patties, flip them over, and then put them back in for another 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and stir up this sauce. I'm going to use a whisk. And that paprika is really going to be what gives it that Cajun flavor, that Cajun, color. All of the herbs and spices and that horseradish is going to really give it some good flavor. So it's going to look kind of like a Cajun tartar sauce almost. There we go. So at this point I would refrigerate this, but we're going to put it to the side. Let me show you what our patties are looking like. Okay. So at this point, we can flip them with a spatula and put them back in the oven for another 10 minutes. But I'm going to go and show you the finished product. So this is what they're going to look like after another 10 minutes in the oven. So we can go ahead and plate these up. I have a plate with just some fresh arugula as a little garnish there. And I'm going to put 2 patties served up for my lunch today. There we go. Lovely. We'll add a little bit of our sauce on top. Sprinkled over the patties. I cannot wait to try this homemade sauce. It looks so good. And then a little bit of parsley right there on top. There we go. There's your final plate. Let's have a taste here. nice saucy bite. All right, let's give it a try. Really flavorful. The patties have plenty of moisture. Very good. Oh, this is going to be a great lunch. It feels light, but filling at the same time. You're going to get plenty of protein, keep you full and satisfied, energized for the rest of your afternoon. Now, since I made a batch before and a batch now, I've got quite a few salmon patties. So you can also freeze these. So let me show you. I did take some and freeze them on a baking sheet. Once they're frozen, you can now put them all in a bag together, and they're not going to stick together. You can pull them one or two out at a time. So I'm just going to write on here what it is and the date. And I can pop my salmon patties into my freezer bag, and you can easily heat them up in the oven or in the microwave whenever you're ready to enjoy them down the road. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. Thanks for joining me. Let me know if you try the recipe. If you're watching online, the recipe is down in the description box. And if you want to find this recording, it's on our Live Life Well YouTube page. Let me know if y'all have questions. I'll take a minute to look at the comments, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks.